Hey guys, today on Food is Good, we're going to be talking about short ribs. Actually, it's one of those dishes that, can be a little intimidating because it's, kind of big there, but it's really one of the easiest meats to cook because you actually braise it. So you get it going, you forget about it, you come back to it, and it's done. It's a little bit more to it than that, but that's what we're going to be breaking down today. Today we're going to be talking about short ribs. We're also going to be pairing the short ribs with a buttermilk mashed potatoes. And before you raise your eyebrows at that, just know it's good. It's really, really good. I'll tell you the story about the buttermilk here in a second. And we're going to pair those with some green beans, just some garlic herb green beans. Can't go wrong with that. So thanks for watching. It's going to be exciting. Let's go. So, like I said today, we're going to be tackling short ribs. First thing you want to do, whenever you're doing any kind of thick cut of meat like this, you want to braise that meat. You don't want to just put it in the oven and cook it because there again, nobody wants brown on their meat. At least I don't. And they're not going to tell you if they do. So what we're going to do is just make sure it's brown, guys. And with this right here, this can actually hold a lot of salt and pepper and garlic just because it's such a thick piece of meat. So while my skillet is getting hot right here, I'm going to go ahead and break this down. Somebody's going to thank you for this right here. It's really good. So we're going to get about 4 pieces out of this right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take this meat right here and I'm going to put our, trinity. I call it the trinity of cooking. A little salt, pepper, garlic. And with this mixture right here, it's probably going to be more salt and garlic because I also like to crack my black pepper on it. So I'm just seasoning up this meat. Or I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but I'm putting a lot of salt on this meat. That's pretty much right here. So we're doing this right here. And then what I'm going to do is start cracking some black pepper on it. And I guess the word was generously. Generously is what I'm doing. So we're salt, pepper in this right here. Getting it all around. My skillet should be hot. That's hot. I'm just going to take it right here. And I'm going to start off with the fat, meaty part down. And you can hear it cooking. Bone side up. There's not a whole lot of meat back here. So if we start cooking with this right here, I believe it's going to come apart. So we start with the fat part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let that meat brown. I'm going to take it and brown it on all 3 sides. I'm not going to brown the underbelly of it or the bone part of it, but I'm going to brown off the 2 sides and then the top part of it. So while that's browning over there, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start working on my potatoes for my buttermilk mashed potatoes. Now, like I said, that's probably not something that you hear often, buttermilk mashed potatoes. My grandmother used to cook with buttermilk back in the days, and her food's so amazing. So a lot of the recipes that I cook today comes from things I grew up eating. And a lot of the stuff I grew up eating was the food that she cooked. But this one particular dish she used to make was this buttermilk macaroni and cheese. It was amazing. It's still amazing. And what she would do is she would just, instead of using regular milk in it, she would use buttermilk. One day I was talking to my mom and I was like, well, Mom, why did Granny use buttermilk in her mashed potatoes? And it kind of reminds me of this story about cooking meatloaf in a certain size pan. And it went on from generations. Like whenever you cook meatloaf, you have to cook it in a 8x6 pan. The only way you can do it is in an 8x6 pan. So finally the girl goes to her mom and says, why do we only cook it in an 8x6 pan? And she said, because a big loaf wouldn't fit in a smaller pan. So we have to use that size pan. So I said that to say, whole nother story there. But I said that to say the reason my grandmother would cook with buttermilk is because she ran out of regular milk. No rocket science there. That's why she did it. She ran out of regular milk, so she cooked with buttermilk. So I just took the idea behind that and incorporated it in my smashed potatoes. So they're gonna be really good. Buttermilk's gonna add a little pungentness to your dish. So you have to, when you use it, don't use a lot of it. I mean, you're not trying to choke anybody out. So what we're gonna do is, on a separate cutting board, because I had raw meat on this one right here, on a separate cutting board with a separate knife, I'm gonna go ahead and take some Yukon Gold mashed potatoes. I like these mashed potatoes. I kind of call them my cheap potatoes because I don't have to peel them and they're still just as good. So what I'm gonna do is that, and they've already been rinsed off. So what I'm gonna do with that, I'm gonna go ahead and break some of these potatoes down. And then I'm gonna blanch them off. Little quick secret here, cold on cold. So if you're using cold potatoes, use cold water. A buddy of mine told me that. It made sense at the time. So we're gonna go ahead and break down some of these potatoes here. And then I'm gonna go ahead and cut the water on and let the water be getting hot over here. A little cold water here. We wanna salt the water also. Whenever you're cooking potatoes, pasta, you wanna be sure to put some salt in there. The potatoes will absorb salt. So I'm gonna put this on right here. I'm gonna cut that on right there and let it go. Finish knocking out some more potatoes here. Well, first I'm gonna take a look at this here. Looking good here, browning up really good. Nice, nice, right here, brown. Man, that looks good. Reminds me of a story. When I was younger, growing up in Alabama, I remember going into this grocery store. Me and a buddy of mine went into the grocery store, and the lady, I guess she felt sorry for us. No, I'm not going to tell you why. We were probably asking for money or something like that, just little kids doing goofiness. But she gave us a piece of meat, and I'm almost certain that it was a piece of short rib. So we go home and we cook that. So we get the skillet very hot, and we put it in there and we cook it on all sides. And I promise you, that stuff was tough as the day is long. We could not eat it. We threw it away. I remember that because I just do. I guess it's one of those, it stood out to me how tough the meat was. So it always stayed with me, you know. So never go into a store looking hungry, asking people for some meat. They may give you a piece of tough meat or not tell you how to cook it. Today I'm telling you what you need to do. So we're going to take this right here, and we're browning it off. We're already browned it off on one side. We're going to brown it off on the other side. And then we're going to finish it off in the oven. But before we finish it off in the oven, we're going to take this off the pan, take this off the skillet, take the meat out the skillet rather. And then we're going to add some of our mirepoix with it. So we're going to add some carrots, some onions, and mushrooms to this right here. We're going to add a little red wine to it also. We're going to thicken it up with a little cornstarch once we add some broth in it, some beef broth. Man, this smells good. I'm going to go ahead and salt the water. A little salty right there. I'm going to go ahead and take my potatoes and put them in the water. Right here for my buttermilk smashed potatoes. So while that's cooking, this is browning up right here. I'm going to turn it on the other side. So we've taken the short ribs out, and we have the onions and mushrooms in here. What I'm going to do with this is I am going to add a little flour to it to thicken up our broth. So we got that happening. I'm also going to add just a little tomato paste to this. Also, a little tomato paste. Tomato paste has a tendency to give things body. Flavor, obviously, but a little body. So this is sizzling and sounding really good. I'm going to add something else to this before I add in my broth to this. I'm going to add in a little red wine. So I'm adding a little red wine. So I'm going to grab it. It was hiding from me. Little red wine. Kind of deglaze the pan. And if you're not a drinker, which I'm not, don't worry about it, because what happens is you're actually cooking off the alcohol. So all of this is coming out of it. Some of that, it's the alcohol flavoring. So you're going to get a little flavor, but you're not going to get the actual potency of the alcohol. So you're still good. Still good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a little beef broth. And then I'm going to put my short ribs back in here. So stir that up some. I'm actually going to change it and go over to a whisk right here and whisking this up. It's cooking on high. I'm going to come back and take a look at that, but let me check my potatoes. Potatoes are doing good. What I'm going to do real quick while this is cooking, I'm going to actually add a little bit more broth to it. Add a little bit more broth to it. All right, here. For some reason, I feel like I see that butter over there. And this dish doesn't even call for butter. It doesn't even calls for it. But I may put a little in. Just a little. You can't be a Southern cook and don't cook with butter. Butter just adds flavor. So I'm gonna put a little bit in there. Like I say, you don't have to. I did just because I like the flavoring of it. A little saltiness to it. So while that's cooking, and I like the way that looks right there, I'm gonna go ahead and add my short ribs back to it. You don't want the broth or the gravy or stock, whatever you call it here. You don't want it to cover the meat because you're not trying to boil it. You're just trying to simmer it in the oven. And this is going to cook for about 3 hours. But with the size of this, I'm going to say actually about 2.5 hours in the oven. So I'm going to take this and put it in the oven. So what I'm going to do now, we have the short ribs in the oven cooking. Our potatoes have already come to a boil. They're done. They're tender. We have them sitting on the stove, kind of just waiting. You know how you all get dressed up, hurry up and wait. Well, we kind of hurried up those potatoes, but now they're waiting. They're on the stove. They're already through boiling. They're nice. So what I'm going to do next is once I check my beef, I'm going to go ahead, add buttermilk, add butter, and a little heavy cream, salt and pepper to those potatoes. Fold them on the heat on the stove so the buttermilk doesn't curl. That's what we call it. So we don't want it to curl. So we don't want it to get really hot. So that's why we're putting them in warm potatoes versus a hot Yukon baked potato. And if that doesn't make sense, it makes sense to me. So that's what we're going to do. So we got that right there. So we have that cooking on the stove or on slow heat on the stove right here. I'm going to go ahead and check my short ribs. And they look like they're cooking up really good. So now what I'm going to do is I have a saute skillet on right here. I'm going to go ahead and start on my green beans. So while this is getting hot, I'm going to put a little oil in there. So my potatoes are sitting over here and they've already come to a boil. We've cut them off. They're nice and tender. What I'm going to do next is, and I came up with this idea here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add my buttermilk, little heavy cream, and butter to my potatoes over here because I don't want them to curdle. So, and hopefully I said that word right. So I don't want them to curdle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that and kind of fold it in there while I have it on kind of low heat. So now what I'm doing is short ribs look good. Those are doing good. I'm going to take my beans and I'm going to go ahead and snap them. Now you can, and it looks like they're all ready. I'll be honest with you, there's a few pieces on them. So I'm going to go ahead and break them off just a little. Break them off right here. You know, that takes too long. I'm going to go ahead and chop them off right here. So I'm chopping the tips of them off. with these green beans, they're really not stringy. If they were stringy, you'd pull here and pull that part out of it. But it looks like they've already been peeled right here. So I'm just cutting that little tip off the end of them. Right here. So we got those already cut up. What I'm going to do is I already have my water over there. So I'm going to blanch these things off in a little salt water. While that's working and we're blanching those off, I'm going to go ahead and cut my saute skillet on, get it hot. That's working right there. Next I'm going to go ahead and do is add a little buttermilk, a little heavy cream to my potatoes. And a little cold butter to it, my potatoes. Right here. And like I said earlier, I'm just going to fold those. The more you work your potatoes, it becomes starchier. And that's not what we want here. So we're just going to fold those in there. Let that heat up very slowly, because you don't want your buttermilk to separate. So that's looking good too. So we're going to let that sit there. I'm going to crack a little black pepper in it. Normally we would smash them, but with these right here, I don't want to smash them. I just want the texture of the potatoes. So they're going to be kind of lumpy. Lumps are okay in your potatoes, not your gravy. So while that's doing that, it's heating. Green beans are almost there. So we're going to take a look at the short ribs, because I'm going to say they're ready. They look really, really good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take them. Those look really good. Kind of turn them over. Looks really good. It's good. I'm going to sit these here because we're about to start plating. Couldn't get it out. So green beans have already blanched off over there. I'm going to go ahead and add these green beans into this hot skillet right here. And then, depending on the application, you'll put your garlic in first, but I don't want my garlic to burn while my green beans are cooking. So, put this here. Go ahead and take this garlic, smash it, kind of do like a little rough chop on it. Actually do a little bit thinner than a rough chop, because nobody wants to bite down on a big chunk of garlic. But you want the flavoring of it. Right here. Do another chop. Right here. And we're going to put that right in there with the green beans. Take a little fresh thyme. Whenever you have an opportunity to use fresh herbs, use fresh herbs. Have I used dry herbs before? Of course. But if you have an opportunity to use fresh herbs, use fresh herbs. So I'm going to put a little thyme in there. Looks really good. Smells amazing. That's like my new word now. Amazing. So I got that in there. Just going to put those to the side. And now I'm going to stir it up. Add a little bit more olive oil to it. Add a little salt and pepper to it. Guys, hopefully, if anything, I've showed you how easy it is to make short ribs. Looks really good. So those look good. You kind of want a crunch to your green beans. You don't want them to be soft. You don't want them to be hard either. Oh, really good. I'm just going to put a little bit more salt in it. So, now, the fun part. This is the part I like. This is where we get to the plating part. So, right now, I'm about to start plating up the smashed potatoes, buttermilk mashed potatoes with my short rib. Looks good, guys. Right here. right here. It looks good. I'm gonna take a little of this broth, gravy, jus, whatever you want to call it, demi-glaze. It's all good. Put across it. Guys, this smells amazing. Take these green beans right here. Cut that off. Guys, this is amazing. This is good. Take a little thyme, actually. Put it on top. Can't wait to try it. Guys, it looks amazing here. We have the buttermilk smashed potatoes, short ribs right here, herb roasted green beans. Let's try it. Oh man, this meat is so tender. My God, how tender it is. That is so good. I know I shouldn't talk with my mouth full, but that is good. Guys, hopefully you enjoyed this. I'm definitely gonna enjoy this right here. Thanks for watching Food is Good. See you next time.